Did you catch all of those Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 Easter eggs? We've got them for you here on Screen Junkies News. Hey guys, this is an Easter egg video, so it goes without saying, this is your spoiler warning. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is in theaters now, delighting all of us over and over and over again. We cannot stop talking about how much we adore this movie. And we're also going to break down all those little Easter eggs that you may or may not have caught. With me, I have Eric Eisenberg from Cinema Blend and Mr. Matt Key.
Hi, Sasha.
All right,
Hi,
gentlemen,
Internet.
let's start at the very beginning of the film, where we have Star-Lord playing a video game.
I'll let you go on the jump first. Well, that's a fun one, and that's been kind of talked about since it happened. The assumption there is that like he's like tracking this obelisk because it like comes in from like another dimension, since it's this multi-dimensional battery-eating beast. It's actually a game from 1977. It's a classic football game from Mattel. It's a handheld football game. Yeah.
It was awesome.
And it would make sense because, 10 years later, he goes disappearing into space as a little boy. So, yeah, he probably had that.
That's the one thing he had with him along with his cassette player.
Makes
you wonder what else he had in his pocket.
I know. I can't wait for Guardians 3. What other fun little...
Well, I guess he'll be coming back to Earth before then, so it's not special.
Man. There's also that Zune joke, which just made me endlessly happy.
That's just great, just because, like, even going into the screening, I was just like, how are they going to introduce an Awesome Mix Volume 3? It doesn't really make sense.
My theory was that, like, Ego was going to be like, well, your mother made me an awesome mixtape. That's what I was like, oh my God, this will be awesome. But see, like, it would have been a little bit too similar to say, like, okay, now they're just trying to squeeze in another soundtrack. Yeah, that's fair.
The Zune, holy crap, was that
perfect. The Zune, he's like, 300 songs?
It's so, I love this movie so much.
The joke of him like, everyone on Earth, this is what everyone on Earth is using.
Oh, man.
So good.
And also now, he had awesome mixes from his mom. Mm-hmm. He's got awesome mixes from his dad.
Yeah.
Oh, so many feels, you guys. We're going to get there. So when I was a kid, I will not even lie, I loved Howard the Duck. So when Howard the Duck showed up, voiced by Seth Green randomly.
So good.
That was pretty great.
In the first Guardians, and then this one, like, I think all of us were wondering, I mean, after the first one, I was specifically wondering, could they ever think about, like, another Howard the Duck movie? Because obviously the one with Leah Thompson is a notorious disaster, but you could, like, you might, like, re-own the character. And so, obviously, probably won't get his own movie, but I loved seeing him in this one. Obviously, he shows up on the Contraxia with the rest of the Ravagers. He says something about, someone remind me of this quote.
I think it's something like, you don't get luck till you've been with a duck or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But no, it's a great little, like, moment, and you have kind of just the kind of dirty humor of Howard the Duck, and and
he's like smoking, has a martini.
Yeah, of course, yes, exactly what you expect.
And he actually looks like a duck now instead of a man in like a giant mascot suit.
Would you say that the Leah Thompson movie is a famously huge turd?
I have famously huge turds, and it's named. I will name them all Howard the Duck. And also, he shows up in the post-credit scene too, or not the post-credit scene, during the actual credits, like during the crawl.
So here's what I couldn't figure out, and maybe you guys can help me. What was the inspiration for that design? Was that like the back of like a G.I. Joe? Like, I remember seeing stuff like that when I was a kid.
Could see that kind of action figure.
Like action figure, or like maybe rock album. Like, I couldn't figure out the specific aesthetic that they were stealing from.
I felt like it was a little rock album-y, a little bit Brady Bunchy.
Yeah.
Especially with the dancing.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that it kind of reminded me of. And there's all kinds of Easter eggs. We will get to some more Easter eggs that were in that list. One of the things that I just loved so much was how it would say, I am Groot, and then it would transition to someone's name.
I saw a theory, and I don't know what this would even mean, but someone suggested that you should count so in the credits, I am Groot will appear over specific names, right? And then it'll like transition to production designer.
Some departments, exactly.
Or like certain names or something like that. But it's very subtle and it happens very quickly, but someone suggested that an Easter egg might be how many times that happens, and the number might correspond to something.
Holy crap.
Oh, God, I love the internet sometimes. Well, that's interesting.
Good work, Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of the internet, there has long been an internet theory about Stanley's cameos. We did a video about that earlier that you can find on the channel, but that also leads into The Watchers. The Watchers, which is another Easter egg, Eric.
Another Easter egg. You get to see them twice in the film. You get to first see them when Rocket, Yondu, and Groot are kind of doing their whole
jump
portal jumping, and so you get to see him first time.
Like they're pulling their Rick and Morty.
Exactly, and you get that little reference to the FedEx cameo. You get the confirmation that like every single one of Stan Lee's characters within the MCU, all of his cameos are exactly the same character. Maybe a little bit more, as we also discussed in that other video. But yeah, you get the race of the Watchers, who are like legendary within Marvel Comics, have been around since the 60s.
They're one of the main alien races.
Yeah, they're one of the big cosmic
they're one of
forces,
the giant
absolutely.
ones,
along with just like all the Celestials and all that. It's major players. So yeah, it's like, and so seeing them show up, especially seeing them paired up with Stan Lee, again, kind of confirming a fan theory that's been around for so long. I just
love that Stan Lee was wearing like Olimar's spacesuit. It was like, oh, are you also referencing Pikmin now? Like, it was just like, what are you doing? But like, I love that he had the line. He's like, and then I was a FedEx delivery man. It was like a very clear nod to Civil War. It was like, Tony Stank? That's his name. That's his name, Tony Stank.
And also, I'd just like to point out the idea that if he is this like kind of god-esque character, Watcher adjacent, he should know who Tony Stark is.
He does. My theory on that is that he does know who Tony Stark is. He just wanted to call him.
Exactly.
He
just
wanted to call him
Tony Stank.
Easter eggs inside Easter eggs. Okay, there's also, this has a question mark, a Corbinite skull.
So the Corbinites are the race of beings that Beta Ray Bill belongs to. Beta Ray Bill is like this. He looks sort of like a skeletal horse, like a Thestral, if you know Harry Potter. And he was one of the only people worthy enough to hold Mjolnir. Yep. And Odin saw that as such a great thing that he's like, I will make you your own hammer, and it will be called Stormbringer. I think a Stormbringer or something like that. But he's a famous Thor character, but he comes from a race of horse people, basically. And when that scene happened, I was just like, what are the skulls? I know that. I think I see a Beta Ray Bill skull. So who knows if it is?
Exactly. And there is that, like, when in the first Guardians, when Star-Lord is dancing around a Morag, you see him kind of knock a skeleton that kind of looks like a little bit of a horse face. That there's been some speculation about that being a Corbinite also. So it seems that James Gunn likes Corbinites, but only when they're dead.
Yeah.
Racism. Okay, so I said we were going to talk a little bit more about the end credits. There's a bunch of little things you can catch in the end credits, and one of them is Cosmo the dog.
So I again, just to clarify, as you did earlier, like when we say end credits, we're not talking about specific post-credit
scenes. It's literally the crawl. Like as the crawl is going past and you're waiting for your 5 post-credit scenes,
there's
you can spot all these little things.
And one of them is Cosmo the dog, who is Russia. In the 50s, launched dogs into space to see if biological matter could exist in space. One of those dogs went on to become a telepathic super genius named Cosmo, who in the comics runs Nowhere, the base of operations the Guardians work out of, and he kind of sends them on missions from time to time. He and Rocket hate each other in the comics, and he adds an INK to every other word. He's like, "Hello, Kink. My name is Cosmo the dog, Kink." Like,
And he was in Guardians 1.
He was in Guardians 1 with the Collector, and he kind of like was wearing a spacesuit and a little bubble thing, and he kind of like trotted out.
And he ran out when they blew everything up.
My guess is that now that he's been in 2 films, we'll see him in Guardians 3.
Cool.
In some capacity.
That would be fun.
And James Gunn loves dogs.
Yeah.
So,
who doesn't?
That's also good.
Jerks. The other one in the end credits, and this in my theater, everybody went, as it went past, is...
The Collector. Or I'm sorry, the Grandmaster, played by Jeff Goldblum.
There you go.
Nothing to do with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, going to appear in Thor Ragnarok, but there he is.
And he's dancing.
He's just dancing. And actually, I did ask Kevin Feige about that little specific cameo, why it's in there, because again, completely random. He's not in the movie. And while he said that it was kind of just footage that they had, he also did name drop the fact that the Grandmaster, and this is the reason why I screwed up my head, Grandmaster and Collector are brothers.
In the comics, they're cosmic elders, and they're considered brothers.
And Goldblum.
So I mean, who's to say where those two characters might show up together on a future film?
So here's what I love. Kevin Feige's like, we just had footage of Jeff Goldblum dancing around in his Grandmaster costume. Those Guardian sets just must be the best.
Well, and then like the Thor set, I've heard nothing but like everyone just had a blast because Taika Waititi was like coming in, direct, joke, direct, funny comment, like we're all best friends. Let's how like.
He's my friend from work.
My friend from work.
Yeah. So then we get into, and this one we are putting an asterisk by because we're going to give you some, but there are a lot more in all of those jump points. There are Easter eggs aplenty. Yes, Matt Key?
But so the joke that we made earlier about like the Rick and Morty like So there's a joke where like Rocket and Kraglin and Groot and Yondu are all like between like the 50 jump points, and it basically means that they're like jumping from planet to planet. And as they're doing that, like their faces are warping and all this other funny stuff, but they're also passing over planet after planet, and it happens all so fast that I could not. I was like, I know that there's Easter eggs here, but I can't watch them all.
So I'm only seeing like this movie once before actually doing this video.
Your face sort of did the same thing, like one eyeball.
I was like, I can't handle those many Easter eggs.
Baby Grooted barfed.
Yeah, like blood starts coming out of my nose, and it's that's actually brains. But yeah, it was like, so if you're watching the movie, go back and watch it a second time. I guarantee you'll be like, oh well, those are actually our Arcturians race. But there's a lot there. The one that I was able to pick out was, and I might be wrong, who knows? But there's a time when they like kind of float by this race of just like amoebas, like large amoebas. Sure. And I knew that those guys appeared in a Thor comic, so I went and double checked it, and they are called the Fomalhaut. Sounds like formal hottie, but
nice. That's what I call Eric Eisenberg.
Ouch, jeez. That's mean.
I call you current hottie.
Why the
formal? Oh no,
I said
former.
not
okay,
former.
Jeez, okay, yeah.
No, formal,
Okay,
like
that's
in
fine.
a
Yeah, we're good.
tuxedo and a ball cap. Jeez.
But they appeared in Thor Annual #6 as villains. I doubt that we're going to see a giant race of amoebas attacking people, but
it's a nice little.
But it was a fun little nod,
egg.
and it for all I know, James Gunn was like, "I want a race of amoebas," and they were like, "Cool, we'll do that." But I was
we know
like,
it might just be like, I mean, with the Adam Warlock or supposed Adam Warlock cocoon, the first movie, he was just like, he just saw something cool in a book that he just wanted to.
He was like, do that.
Yeah, just do that.
Well, speaking of the Adam Warlock cocoon, so now having seen the movie, I said earlier to Matt Keith, like 700 videos ago, there is only one person who can play that character for me, and that is Armie Hammer. Now having seen the race, like if it's not Armie Hammer, I'm pissed.
You know, I had a thought in that department.
What did you think?
McConaughey.
Watch the poop out of that too.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is also motivated by the fact that there were talks about like McConaughey meeting with Marvel a little while ago, and that was also when But
that was to play Ego, wasn't it?
You know, they never specifically said, and the thing is that James Gunn has now said that there were times that he was trying to work Adam Warlock into the script for Guardians 2, which makes me like, I mean, that's just my gears working in the head. But like, so maybe like he was talking about McConaughey for Warlock. Warlock ended up not being in the movie, and maybe
I just think it'd be funny to like have a Texas accent as like the universe's most genetically perfect being is a Texan. As a Texan,
It totally
I am
makes
from
sense.
Fort Worth. All my Fort Worth people.
Well, so going back to Beyonce's from there too, and if you want to talk about perfection, Beyonce.
Oh, yeah.
Beyonce, the queen of all sovereigns. So the sovereigns, this is less an Easter egg and more speculation.
Sure. Yeah. So I had this idea watching it yesterday. Like the more and more I watched it, the more I was like, are the sovereigns inspired by the Church of Universal Truth, but Marvel doesn't want to say Church of Universal Truth? And by the way, Marvel, if you're watching this, don't blame you for not wanting to bring in a whole other space religion into your...
I was thinking, I was like, isn't that where people get ordained so they can like do weddings for their friends on the weekends?
I think that might be universalism.
It's still pretty close, but anyway.
So the Church of Universal Truth is a common enemy of Adam Warlock. It's run by the Magus, or Magus. You say Magus, right?
I say Magus because I read it. I don't hear it. Like,
I say Magus, and like I hate the name. I'm like, oh, Magus. It's like maggots, but Magus ends up, you discover that is like a future version of himself returned to the past, or a separated version of like his darker self, so that he has the logic to control the Infinity Gauntlet. Anyway, Church of Universal Truth is a common enemy in the Marvel Cosmic Universe, who kind of butts up against the Guardians a lot and butts up against Adam Warlock a lot, and they are typically seen as flying these giant temple ships that are run on some of the most sought-after batteries in the universe, and they're called faith batteries. So the Church of Universal Truth, once they get more and more believers, that faith energy they're able to pull to power their ships and their entire civilization. So when they're like, oh, these Anulax batteries, I was like, or faith batteries, Church of the Universe. And like they have like very golden sorts of looks to everything.
Good reason to stay away from faith batteries.
Yeah. Just losing money left and right.
I was like looking up Anulax batteries left and right. I was like, did I forget something?
Okay, now this one we're gonna need your help on. The design of Ego's floor.
This entirely Matt's brain.
Is this
Sorry.
an Easter egg, or is Matt Key just
like
Easter egg crazy?
I'm just like a mad scientist. She's like, I swear it's something.
If you cross your
Connect the
eyes,
wires.
it like pops out and becomes a 3D image of an Easter egg.
Yeah, I don't know, but every single time they got to a shot where it was sort of like at a 3 angle down onto the floor of his like main hall.
So I will say, I didn't look for an Easter egg in that, but whenever I saw it, it definitely caught my eye and caught my attention, and it felt so designed that I'm like, well, maybe this is something because
Yeah, like every single-
it seemed to...
Purposeful?
Yes, thank you for that great word.
It seemed like very on purpose, and every
Yeah.
time it showed up, I was like, I swear that's something. It was kind of like the nod to the Infinity Stones in the very first part of the Guardians when like Peter Quill goes to steal that orb for the first time,
Oh,
Sure.
and you
see
saw
the
like
figures,
the
sure.
6 colors in the background, sort of in
yeah.
a circle, and
Yeah.
it was like you're not paying attention to that. You're just like, yeah, it's very pretty, but then you look at it like, wait a minute. So like, I feel like that was something too, and like the only thing I kept thinking of was like, is that a map of Battle World from like the Secret Wars in 1985? But like, it's not. But like, I know it's something.
It looks
So if
something
you
familiar.
know what it is, you need to tell us.
Tell me.
But in the meantime, we are now going to get into a major fist fight over who's in the car.
Okay.
There's a dude in a car
And it's
in
an old dude.
Oh,
Missouri.
Yes, as
It's a-
Ego's like the whole thing is happening,
Yeah.
there's like the whole
As the
plant
seeds
is
of, like-
growing, and
yeah.
it's
the
driving away.
blobs are.
So there's somebody who is almost like engulfed in the blob,
Right.
and their car is sort of upended, and they stop, and we sort of see them. I have a theory, you have a theory, you have a theory. What's your theory, Matt Key?
Well, like, I don't think that my theory is right, but my initial response was, is that Steve Englehart? So here's why that's important, internet. Steve Englehart is one of the creators of Star-Lord. He's the writer who created Star-Lord, I think in Marvel Premiere number 4, back in like the late 70s.
Exciting number. I like
In Marvel Premiere, or was it Marvel Preview? But they were like more magazine size, so like they're a little bit harder to find. Yeah, anyway, I'm not going to get into that story. Like,
That was your thought.
I could talk
That was
forever.
talking
So I went home and looked up Steve Englehart. He's still alive, and he's got a big white beard, and like it's 2 seconds of film. So I was like, I'm convinced that's Steve Englehart. But then the internet was like, nah, it's not Steve Englehart. So
All right,
So,
Eric.
my answer to this mystery is that it's Mr. Greg Henry, who is a longtime collaborator of Steve Gunn. Steve Gunn?
Steve Englehart gun.
Yes, right.
Steve Gunn.
of
He's,
James Gunn.
he's in accounting, I think.
Yeah.
But he worked with, he was in Slither, he's in Super, he's in the first Guardians, and more importantly, he is Star-Lord's grandfather, who we again meet in the first scene in Guardians. There apparently was going to be a longer scene in Guardians 2. James Gunn has talked about this, that was not only going to feature that character, but also like it was apparently involved in a scene that had a lot of Easter eggs.
It was like the most Easter eggy
most
one.
Easter eggy thing, like something along the lines of the Collector's lair in that sense.
Apparently, like I think Simon Williams.
Oh, yes, with,
was,
played by Nathan Fillion. Yes, Mr. Wonder Man, yes.
Was like movie
Is it a movie
posters and
poster,
stuff like that. Yeah, it was in that scene.
So like that was the whole thing, and so I think what we're seeing in that is Greg Henry in old age makeup driving the car. And what kind of sucks, honestly, about the cameo and the fact that it was cut is that this is actually the second time that Greg Henry got cut out of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie in old age makeup. Because in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, he was supposed to show up in an end scene where he was kind of looking up to the stars, saying like, "Where's Peter?" Missing him. Test audiences said, "Too sad." You can't end it that way, which is honestly funny when you consider how Guardians of the Galaxy 2 ended on that incredibly sad note. Again, I think James Gunn kind of earned it.
Yeah.
But so I think that's the explanation, is that guy in the car is just a quick minor glimpse at Star-Lord's grandfather.
So I'm going to be the tiebreaker here, and yes, 1,000% Eric is right. It's Star-Lord's grandfather, and I think the reason
I actually do agree.
Yeah,
with that,
the reason he's there is because, and actually in the movie theater, I was that obnoxious person who like jabbed my husband and went, "It's the guy from the first movie," because they're going to go back to Earth. So they're just laying down the groundwork to be like, remember this guy who was in it for the very first scene, right when we saw Peter's mother die? We're going to go back. Peter's going to be reunited with his family. Like everything is coming back together.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be so.
So I
nice.
just said that and I got the chills all over my body. Here's the thing that you guys need to know. I bawled my face off at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Like the end scene destroyed me. I was wiping snot and tears with the back of my hand. Like
You had
I was
snot coming out of your eyes?
I
You
did.
were a mess.
I was a mess. It was ridiculous. And it was because of the introduction of the OG Guardians. Walk
Yes.
us
Yeah.
through it, Matt Key.
So the original Guardians, from what I understand from the writing process, is that Nicole Perlman, who wrote the first Guardians, initially started with the original Guardians from 1969 and did a few drafts of that, and it just wasn't working because they're very obscure characters. So they went for the marginally less obscure, more modern Guardians for the film, and we all saw how that worked. So in the comics, Dan Abnett started in 2008. You start to discover that the other Guardians from 1969 are still around, but they're in the future, and that future is getting destroyed, and now they're starting to come back to this timeline. I don't think that has anything to do with this, but that's sort of like the comic book background for that
who
sort
these
of like
characters
precedent.
Sure,
who
but
those characters
who do we
are.
meet?
We meet a bunch of, obviously the big guy is Stacker Ogard, who is played by Sylvester Stallone, aka Starhawk, who is James Gunn's favorite Marvel character, I believe. He said that many times, and so it makes sense that he would get Stallone to play that. It's got Ving Rhames making a very brief appearance as Charlie 27,
Ving
which
Rhames,
is great.
who is an Easter egg in and of himself, just because it's like, oh, he's back. I love it. Like whenever there's even that stupid Arby's commercial where he goes, I need a hero. And I'm just like, Ving Rhames.
Ving Rhames. My favorite thing about the two cameos that you just mentioned, if I could just tag on to those.
Yeah, please.
Stekar Ogord, right? Starhawk. Sylvester Starhawk. Like in the comics, he had like big, like kind of these weird like energy beams that surrounded his shoulders, and they sort of like turned into energy wings. And Stallone had like those energy bands as a part of his uniform, and then Charlie 27 famously was like always like a gigantic man, bare-chested, but had these big red steel bolt suspenders across his chest. And Charlie 27 had that, but it was all black, and he had a shirt underneath it. And I was
it was because it was a funeral.
Right.
It was
There you go. That's exactly
his morning bolt suspenders. His morning
suit.
suspenders.
Then who is Michelle Yeoh?
She's Aletta, who is
Ogord.
With Stacker Ogord as the wife, as a husband and wife characters played by again Michelle Yeoh.
It's actually real. I don't mean to Oh my God, I just will actually do on air. I'm so sorry. Aletta is the stepsister who eventually becomes his wife.
Ew.
Okay, fine.
It's really weird.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like their
Shakespeare.
stepbrother, stepsister, they both find the hot god of Arcturus together, and then he grants them both powers, but the powers make them both kind of become
together,
one being together. I don't think they're doing that in the movie though.
Yeah, probably.
So.
Well, that's honestly something that should be discussed in a larger sense. It's like the fact that these guys are all Ravagers as opposed to Guardians of the Galaxy from the year 3000 in a completely alternate universe. Clearly, they're changing some things.
Yeah.
But and as we've seen, like James Gunn do the entire history of this franchise, is that like he takes kind of the base level versions of what these characters are, and he's bringing it to the big screen. And essentially, that's what they're doing with these. And also, I mean, we didn't mention. Michael Rosenbaum is Martinex, who is there in the opening scene with Stacker when we first meet him and Yondu on the bar. Who am I missing?
No, I mean, well, those are the original Guardians. We saw the original
And then
Guardians.
what about the
that is the whole-
1990s Guardians?
So Guardians kind of like fell away for most of the 80s. They kind of like would pop up here and there, but they didn't have their own title until around 1990, 1991 when they got a new title, Volume 1. It was the first time they actually had their own title since 1969. And in that run, they introduced a character named Mainframe. In the comics, Mainframe was a future version of the Vision who went on to become an entire planet's operating system, like their OS. So he's kind of like Ego in a way, but like Cybertron Vision, I guess. But you could oftentimes you would see that character as a disembodied head in a box. And we saw Mainframe and was voiced by
Miss Miley Cyrus.
Yep.
Of all people.
All people.
Such a weird choice.
But like I heard the rumor
I get it. Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, sure.
I heard the rumor that I heard was because James Gunn liked her voice on The Voice, so he's like, I want her to be Mainframe.
Yeah, I like it.
Sure, why
That's
not?
what it is. Sure.
Don't be prejudiced against Hannah Montana.
No,
She's all roided it up now.
No prej. No
New
prej.
thing.
No prej.
It's all about the climb.
The other one.
I'll let you take Kruger.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. No, you're excited about this one.
I am so Krugar is if you've seen the movie, then you'll know. Krugar is the weird red pink fish-looking guy. He has like the weird gills at the end. Doesn't say a word, but that I was like, Krugar? Because Krugar is a Doctor Strange character. He starts off in Guardians, teams up with the Guardians a little bit. But not much. He ends up becoming a Doctor Strange character and becomes the Sorcerer Supreme of the 22nd century. and has the cloak of levitation and the eye of Agamotto and the whole nine. But and then Doctor Strange is the ancient one to him, teaching him how to be the Sorcerer Supreme in the 22nd century. Bagoo.
So his involvement in this film means...
His involvement in this film is that he's a Guardian of the Galaxy. He's a Ravager in some capacity, and maybe in the future Marvel Cosmic universe we'll discover that he actually has sorcerer powers.
Oh man,
probably doubtful.
You didn't catch the actor who played him, did you?
No, I just figured it was just a CGI thing. I figured they didn't even have an actor because I was looking in the credits and didn't even see Kruger.
Well, I guess I was just thinking with Thanos, even in Avengers, the fact that's not CGI. That
was Damien Poitier. Yeah.
Well, we want to know if you guys caught any Easter eggs that we didn't catch, but gentlemen, that insight was on point. Thank you so much.
I'm sure there's 10,000 more. That
there's got to be. Yeah, the whole jump point thing.
This is on you guys, though. We need your help. Find those other 10,000 and let us know in the comments below. You can tweet us at SJ News. Make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, you can always click here for more Screen Junkies news.